Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here. Now today I have a card for you that features 3 techniques. First, we'll do a simple mirror stamping technique that gives you a reverse image of any stamped image you may have. Then we'll do a background created by layering up different stamps. And third, we'll do a DIY pull tab slider feature. You don't need any specialty tools for this. And the best part is it's really fun to make. All right, now this is the Trinity Stamps STAMPtember collaboration stamp set with Simon Says Stamp. This is available for a limited time only over at Simon Says Stamp. Once it's gone, it's gone. However, I will be sharing some similar products at the end of this video that you could use instead. Or if you're not into gnomes, which this features the cutest gnomes, I'll share some options at the end of this video too. So stay tuned for that. Notice that the image of the sled with the 2 gnomes is pointed down towards the left, right? I want the reverse for my card. You can see my completed card here. The image is reversed, so the sled is pointed down towards the right. So we're going to start out by doing that mirror stamping technique so you can get a reverse image. This works with a lot of different stamps you may have. Now the way I'm going to do my mirror stamping today is using a Waffle flower grip mat. However, if you don't have a mat like this, I will talk about other options. Now this is just a solid mat that you can use to hold your paper still. I've done a complete video on different things about this grip mat, and I'll link to it up here in the top right and in my description below. It's basically made of the same material our clear stamps are made of. It's just solid. So it has that natural stick to it. And it'll allow us to do really easy mirror stamping. If you do not have a grip mat like this, I will link to a video at the top right and in my description below of another way you can do this with acetate. It's an older video, but it still works fine. Or you can use a silicone mat for this technique too. Now I am using the smaller grip mat here. I normally use the bigger, but I just wanted to demonstrate that you could use this technique with any size of the grip mats. This one is sized for an A2 card, but if you have a grip mat of a different size, it would work fine too. I'm placing this into my stamping tool, and what's great is it sticks right in there and stays put. Now I am taking out that stamp image that I want to get a mirror image of, or reverse of. I'm going to be using my Gina Designs Obsidian Black Amalgam ink. This is my favorite black ink for getting a dark black crisp image, but also because it works with whatever coloring medium I may want to do. Today I will be using alcohol markers. I had noticed it was starting to get dry, so I'm just re-inking it, and I thought I'd show you how I go about re-inking my ink pads. I don't want to re-ink this with too much ink each time because I don't want it to be too juicy because I'm using it for crisp images. So I just keep a re-inker on hand. I don't have to re-ink it very often. Now let's do the technique. I have my grip mat in the MISTI stamping tool and my stamp on the door. I'm going to ink up my stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it onto the grip mat. So I'm going to stamp it onto the grip mat. Then I'm taking a piece of my cardstock. This is Nina Classic Crust Solar White. Whatever cardstock you have will work. And I'm pressing it into the corner of my MISTI and pressing it onto the grip mat. And it'll pick up that ink. Now I'm going to repeat that process a few times. Each time my mirror image will get darker. So you'll see each time I peel it off, that outline image, the reverse image, will be darker. Now I am using a dye ink to do this. If you have a pigment ink, a black pigment ink, like Altenew Obsidian Black Pigment Ink or VersaFine, you may only need to do it once. But I figured since I'm here, I'm just going to do it a few times to make it nice and dark and crisp. And then I will also just stamp the stamp how it's normally done just for comparison. So on the right is what it normally looks like. On the left is my mirror image. No one would ever know you use this technique, and now the image is facing the direction I want it to face for my card design. So this is an easy way to do mirror stamping. Again, I have 2 other videos linked if you want more information about this technique. Now to clean off my grip mat is very easy. I just use Hero Arts Ultra Clean, which is a stamp cleaner, and it's good to go for the next time I need it. Off screen, I colored that reverse stamped image, and I also stamped and colored 3 trees and the reindeer that are all in that Waffle Flower STAMPtember set. I didn't do any fancy coloring, I just used my Olo markers and colored it just to the best of my ability. And now I'm using scissors to fussy cut the image. I'm cutting them out, leaving a little white trim just to make it easier. If you have the coordinating dies, you definitely could use those instead, but I didn't have them, so I just chose to do the fussy cutting. All right, now it's time to do this background. See that blue snowflake background there? I just had some fun layering up different images. For this, I'm using the Waffle Flower STAMPtember stamp set. This is just like the Trinity in that it's only available at Simon Says Stamp for a limited time, but you could use any images to create a sky like this. Snowflakes are great. I like this particular set because of all of the sizes included, so many great techniques you could do with it. Now I have a piece of Concord and Ninth Aqua Sky cardstock, my favorite color, cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'm starting with 3 of the larger snowflakes and placing them onto that background in my MISTI stamping tool. I will stamp these images with Hero Art's Mist ink. Now you could use absolutely any ink for this. This is a dye ink, and I'm just going for a soft look here. I do not want these snowflakes to be too bold, because I don't want it to distract from the main elements on my card. This is just a fun backdrop. So that's why I'm going for a very soft look here. I like to start with a very soft color ink and then stamp it more and more until I get the amount of color I want, as dark as I want it to be. If I started with a darker color, it may start out too dark and I can't go backwards. You can always build to darker, but you can't build to lighter. After I did some with the mist ink, I'm switched to some white pigment ink, and I'm making sure that those layer. So this is going to give me a layered look, but it'll still be soft. Then I got some more snowflakes here, and this time I'm stamping with Hero Art's Dusty Blue ink. This is a really light blue. Again, I'm going to keep stamping it till I get it just where I want it. And this blue is different than the color of the cardstock, but I think that's fun. I think it just adds to that layering feel. But again, everything is so light that it won't be distracting when it's a backdrop for our card. Now I'll just keep moving these around and stamping until I'm happy with all of the snowflakes I've layered up here. And I thought it would be fun to add some subtle white spatter to the background. So I'm taking 1 drop of white Reinker. So this is the ink Reinker that I would use to re-ink my white pigment ink pad. I put 1 drop onto my glass work surface, a little bit of water, just a tiny bit, and then I will mix that with my brush and just tap it onto the background. This will put tiny little white dots, and it will also give a little bit of texture because this is kind of thick. Because I'm using a pigment ink re-inker with very little water, it'll stay opaque and give a teeny bit of texture. Now I'll set that aside to dry, and now let's create the interactive feature. I first need to make the snow slopes in the background. I'll have 1 in the background and 1 where we will have that sliding element. I have 2 pieces of white cardstock that are 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I am drawing pencil lines just where I want the angles to be. Now the piece on the right will be the back slope. And the piece here on the left that I'm about to mark, that will be the front slope where I'll have the slider feature, so that one isn't as tall as the other. I will then use my trimmer to cut along those pencil lines. You could eyeball it, but I felt that by drawing the pencil line with my ruler first, it really helped me to plan it out a bit better. So I'll just hold these 2 pieces so you can see how they will go together on the front of our card. Now I'm going to take that front piece, the front slope, that's where we'll add our sliding gnomes. So we'll set the other 2 pieces aside. On this one, I'll use a ruler to draw a straight line at the same angle as the top of our paper, and it's about 3/4 to an inch from that top edge. So you can see I did a pencil line there. Next, I'm taking a hole punch. You could use a small circle die if you prefer. And I'm putting a hole punch at the end of the line on one edge and the end of the line on the other edge, about 1/4 of an inch from the sides of that panel. So you have this funny looking line there with the holes at the end. I will then put my scissors into one of the holes and start cutting across that pencil line. Now this doesn't have to be a perfectly straight cut line. Nobody's ever going to see it. Now after I've cut that, I'm going to cut another cut very close to that other one. So I end up with a narrow slit between those two punch circles. Now if you have a slider die that is meant to make a little slider slot like this, by all means you can use that. But I wanted to show you how you could do this without any specialty dies. So we have that little narrow slit that's about 3/4 of an inch from the top edge of that panel. Next, we need to create the pull tab pieces. I'm using that Aqua Sky cardstock once again, and I'm cutting 3 pieces that are 1/2 inch wide. It really doesn't matter how long, longer is better. We can always trim it down later. I'm going to take 2 of these and glue them together. This will just make it stronger because it'll be the pull tab. We don't want it to be flimsy. So I'll just glue those 2 together. The third one I'll set aside. I'll talk about that later. So now we have our pull tab ready, and it'll go right above that slit and below the top edge of that white panel. All right, now you need another piece of cardstock, doesn't matter what color this is, and you want it to be about 1 inch wide. Really, it could be a little wider if you wanted to. I'm folding that in half. It really doesn't matter how long. This one is 5.5 inches long. We'll trim it down later. But this is what's going to go behind our little gnome image to allow it to slide back and forth. So it's just a folded piece of scrap cardstock. I will slide that into that slit that we cut. So half of it's coming out the back and half is coming out the front. Then I'll put a bit of adhesive up there at the top to close it shut so that it is stuck on there. Now the glue isn't getting close to the white panel. It's only on that blue because we want it to be able to freely slide up and down. Now it's time to add our pull tab. So I'm going to move this blue piece to the top of our panel, so it's all the way to the top, and then I'll flip it over, and on the back side, I'll put a little bit of liquid adhesive or strong double-sided tape just above the slit. So I'll put it right in this area here. Then I will take that doubled up cardstock pull tab that we created and lay it right onto it. So it sticks out the side there and it lines up on the edge of that blue piece we just added to our panel. So you can see how this now will slide back and forth when you pull that tab. Now, once you've made this once, it's really easy to repeat. Just bookmark this video so you can come back and follow the instructions, and you can do this with any size elements you want. Okay, so now we can start putting all of this together. That's the feature. That is the pull tab sliding feature that you can do without any specialty tools. Next, I'm going to cut another white piece of cardstock to be the same shape as the one we've done. So I'm just holding another piece of white cardstock behind it, drawing a pencil line along that angle, and then cutting along this angle. Now, I could have made this earlier. I just didn't think of it at the time. This piece will just go on top of the other one to hide our pull tab mechanism. So nobody will know that it's ever there. So it's hidden behind that. Now on this one, I'll go ahead and stamp my sentiment now. I want to make sure that I stamp it before I assemble my card because there will be some dimension behind it. So I chose a sentiment from the STAMPtember Trinity Stamp set, and I'll stamp that with black ink. Now you could get creative and do a lot more on here, maybe do another image from the stamp set, but I wanted to keep it clean and simple. Now all of our pieces are ready to put together. So I have the background and the back hill slope that we cut earlier and set aside, and I'm just going to glue that directly onto our background. Now we can add our sliding piece onto it. I'll take the sliding piece and flip it over, and on the back I will put foam tape right below that slit. You can put foam tape everywhere below the slit that we cut, but not above it. So you'll see that I'm putting this very close to that slit. You want to be able to move that pull tab freely so it's very close to the bottom side of that slit. Then I'll fill that area below that with more foam tape. I do like to try to fill that area so that it doesn't get squashed when going through the mail. Now you could actually skip foam tape on this and just glue directly, but I do feel that the pull tab moves a little bit better if you do use foam tape here. I am cutting a thin piece of foam tape, and that can go all along this edge here since that doesn't interfere with that pull tab feature. So you can see where I have all the foam tape here, and now this will be ready to add to the front of our card panel. After removing the release paper, I'll put my background into the corner of my MISTI stamping tool, and then I'll put this into the corner also, and that will help to make sure that it gets lined up and that I place it in just the right spot right away. And notice everything is moving wonderfully. All right, now let's add that stamped hill so that we can hide that mechanism. So I'm just going to tape the mechanism in its closed position, which is all the way up there at the top. And now we can put glue once again under that slit. But this time on the front, we'll put glue underneath the slit. We don't want to put any glue that would get in the way of that pull mechanism. We can put some glue over on the top left there because that's not in the way, but mostly you need it underneath that slit. I'm using strong liquid adhesive. This is Gina K Connect. That way I can wiggle it until it's in just the right position. Now I'm going to hold this up so you can see where the adhesive is. It's mostly below the slit there and not in the way of that blue piece that slides back and forth. So now we can take our stamped panel, the stamped hill, and I'll put all of this in my corner of my stamping tool once again to make sure I get it lined up just right and press that down. So now no one will see that sliding mechanism. Now it's time to test this and make sure it works fine. I notice when I pull the tab all the way out, the part of that blue piece sticking out the top goes too far. So watch, as I pull it down, see it goes way too far there. I need to put a stopper in there. This is easy to do. I just cut a small piece of foam tape. So I'm just going to cut one of these so I have a tiny little slit. I stick the side of my craft knife into the side of that little foam piece. You can see it there. And then I just tuck that in right along the top edge or the top corner of that white slope. So this will keep the big blue piece sticking out the top from coming out the side of the card. So it just forms a little stopper. You don't always have to do this. It just depends on how you put your card together. And that is all I needed to do to fix it up. Now for the fun part, I'm adding our little stamped images. I thought I was going to put the reindeer up on the top right, but I decided he didn't fit there well, so I just used the 3 trees, and I'll add the reindeer to the inside of the card. Now we need to add our gnome onto that sliding feature. You can see the sliding feature is clearly too tall for my little gnome image. It would stick out the top. So I'm just going to cut some of that off. I made it longer than needed just so I could adjust things. It's always better to have your pieces too long than too short. All right, now to add the gnome to that, I'm just using 2 foam squares. This is a thin type of foam square, so it doesn't really add any dimension, just a tiny bit. You could glue it down directly if you wanted to. And then I will place our gnome onto that and make sure that the bottom edge of our stamped gnome image is hanging over the edge of that white hill just a little bit. And then watch how when you pull that tab, he goes sliding down the hill. Isn't that fun? And it's cool because it even goes sliding off the edge of the card. Such a fun way to do a sliding card. And you can see because I did the mirror image, now he slides this way instead of sliding off the left. I just liked this look better. Now I'm pulling the tab to its farthest out position and I made a pencil mark, and its farthest in position and I made a pencil mark. So now I can stamp something between those 2 pencil marks. So I chose another sentiment from the same STAMPtember Trinity stamp set, and I am stamping that with black ink. Now if you wanted to, you could stamp on that 3rd piece that we cut and then glue it on top of the one that's already in our card. I decided just to stamp directly on this, but you do have that option if you don't want to try to stamp on this pull tab at this point. So now I'm stamping that with black ink between those pencil lines, and then I will erase the pencil lines, and we have our stamp sentiment on the pull tab. All we have to do now is trim our little pull tab down because it sticks out way too much. So I'll press it all the way in, and then cut it about a little less than 1/4 inch from the edge of our cardstock. Just for fun, I am rounding the corners of that so it just has a little softer look to it and not those sharp corners. You don't have to do this, but I just feel it finishes it off nicely. Now to put a pull message on that tab, I'm using an older stamp set from Trinity's called the Papercrafting Magic Stamp Set. This has lots of pull, push, shake, arrows, everything you need for interactive cards. So I'm putting pull right on the end of that pull tab, and I'm going to stamp this with that same dusty blue that I used for my snowflakes. That way it'll stand out on that aqua sky cardstock, but it won't be so bold that it distracts from our sentiment. So people will definitely see it, but it won't be too distracting. If you don't have a stamp that says pull, you could definitely just write that with small letters. All right, now I did glue all of this onto the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card, so it opens like a normal card. Now, because this is a A2 card, but we have that little bit sticking off the side, I will put this in a larger envelope. You could use a 5x7 envelope, but I chose to use an A6 envelope. It's just a little bit bigger than A2. You can see the size here, and I will link to my source for those below. If you want this to fit into a regular A2 envelope, just make your card itself a little narrow. That way, when you have the tab sticking off the edge, you can still fit it into an A2 envelope. So that's just another option. Now you can see how when you pull that tab, our little friends go sliding down the hill very easily. Such a fun way to bring a card like this to life. And I added that cute little reindeer to the inside. I just thought he was too adorable to leave behind. On the front, I did add sparkle with just a few older sequins that are star and snowflake shaped, just so it would catch the light nicely. There's a closer look at our layered snowflake background with the little white dots on it. And then, of course, our fun mirror image and pull tab feature. Now, before we go, I wanted to show you some other products that would work for this or work well with these products. Now, if you do like gnomes, Trinity Stamps just came out with a bunch of gnome holiday themed products. Here are some of them here. It would be fun to have this little sled here with Santa gnome going down that hill or maybe flying in the sky. They even have a nativity gnome set, so many cute different things, a little something for everyone. Now, if you aren't into gnomes, don't worry. You could do this technique with a lot of different products. I noticed in this new Trinity release, look at all of these different images that would work for the slider feature. Here you have some other critters that could skate across a card. You have a little bunny, a little deer. Here we have some little penguins. They could be sliding down a hill, just kind of sliding on their little bums. You could even make that little polar bear slide down a hill. Now in this next one, we have lots of little penguin images. You have a skiing penguin, you have a ice skating penguin. All of these would work with today's card design also. I just am showing you these because I was looking at all these products, trying to decide which one to use for today's technique. And I noticed many would work. And I thought if I showed you these, then maybe you could better look through your stash for something that's similar. And by the way, this one has a little skiing bunny and it says Skeezen's Greetings. I think that's adorable. Anyway, I hope you will give these techniques a try. So we have the mirror image stamping, we have the layered background, and the pull tab design. If you have any questions about the products that I used or those products I showed you there at the end, I do have them linked in my description below. And at the end, I will link to the other 2 videos I mentioned during this one. I appreciate the time you spend with me always. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.